You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, Janet van Dyke and Chris Zink joined Anae in the Vet Rehab Summit Qualifiers Group. Now this was our 30-day lead up to the Vet Rehab Summit last year. They were there to chat about the Canine Rehab Institute, what they stand for as well as their journey. They also share what sets the Canine Rehab Institute apart from other training institutions, and as many of you will know, our topic last year at the Vet Rehab Summit was when research meets reality. So they have a research program which when we heard about this we were really excited. They chat about the program, what people who attend can expect, and what is amazing is by the end of the course, they actually had a lot of people that were ready to publish their first papers. So if this is something that you are interested in, you need to go and check it out. If you're interested in completing a certificate in veterinary rehabilitation, maybe you're just interested, you're a vet nurse or physio, and you're thinking about doing a vet rehab certification, you can go to caninerehabinstitute.com. They have lots of information on their website, and they also offer some in-person and online workshops that a lot of you might be interested in. So if you're that person who's getting into vet rehab and you want to see if it's something you might be interested in and you're looking for some more learning, you can also check out Onlinepethealth's free limited access membership. We have some free webinars and trainings on specific vet rehab topics, which we change every few months. So at the moment, we have a small animal webinar by Amy Hesback, Putting Neuroplasticity into Practice, an equine webinar, Rehabilitation of Horses Affected with Tenosynovitis, and that's by Melanie Pereira. And then we have a hydrotherapy one, The Role of Chronic Injury on Phasic and Tonic Muscles with Kirsty Oliver. So guys, go and check that out. If you want to sign up for our free platform, you just have to go to onlinepethealth.com/free. So over to Anae, Chris, and Jane.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Janet.
Hey, good morning.
How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to chat to you about the CRI, what you guys do, what you stand for, and some of the exciting things that you have to offer, because it is so in line with our mission, which is to bring research and reality together, to continue to push to never stop learning, to keep growing, and really to be excellent, to be great at what we're doing, to continue to strive to be better. So Janet, can you introduce yourself, a little bit about you and about what you do and your role at the CRI?
Sure. Thanks so much for including us. So I'm a veterinarian. I spent the first 30 years of my practice life doing surgery, orthopedics and neuro primarily. I got started into the world of rehabilitation during my residency. I had a lot of clients who were physios who would bring me their patients for surgery. And afterwards, I would give them the usual go home instructions that we've given to pet owners over the years. And they would give me that kind of a curious look and say, if this was a child in my pediatric PT practice, I would handle it differently. And so I started to say, what would you do? And it's the silly stuff. Like we would tell people, oh, move his legs like he's riding a bicycle, and the physios would say to me, he's never going to ride a bike. I don't even want him to do that, so that's not a motion that's really appropriate for my dog. And so I learned from them and started pursuing more and more training on really, how is it that physios are so successful, and realized there's so much we could add to what we're doing in veterinary practice. And, this notion of putting a dog in a big bandage and lock him in a crate for 6 weeks because he's just not smart enough to protect himself is so counterintuitive to having a child wake up with their knee in a device that's moving them constantly post-operatively. So I decided, it's time to start offering this and training people. After I left the Animal Medical Center in New York City, I went into a mobile practice. I owned a mobile practice and would do surgery for practices so they didn't have to refer to the veterinary schools and whatnot. And I started training each practice one at a time how I wanted them to do the prehab and then the post-op rehab. And it didn't take me too long to realize that's a really inefficient way to do it, one practice at a time. So I realized what I needed to do instead was to put a group of my clients together, of the veterinarians, and train them as a group. And then as I started to think about it, I realized I shouldn't be the one training them. I should have physios as part of this team because there's just so much that I'm able to pack into my brain that, they have years and years of experience. So that's really what got me to launch CRI back in about 2000. I started checking around with people who I knew were really good on the podium, really dynamic speakers, good educators who also were practicing this concept. And they were all just great. They all just jumped in and said, hey, if you're going to do it, I'd love to be a part. When do we start? How many hours do I? So it was great. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I have Chris in the back here. Let's bring her on and she can join in the conversation. Hi, Chris. I really love what you just said, which ties in with what Chris was talking about, that our fields, the human and veterinary medicine, they shouldn't be considered different. We need to look at them together. We need to use similar techniques. We need to be thinking in the same ways. So that's quite interesting and exciting that you kind of had that thought process that led you to this place. Yeah, and again, that kind of highlights this thing where when we're learning from different professions, from different professionals, it changes our thinking and our perspective, which is just so exciting. So tell us a bit about the CRI now, and what you guys do, how big you are, how many people on the faculty, and what are the courses that you're offering?
So I have to first say my hat's off to Chris, because it was truly an interesting meeting with Chris and myself that truly launched CRI, where we both realized this is something that we need to do. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get started doing this. And Chris very humbly said, I've got some experience in education. I had no idea how incredibly experienced and talented she was. But anyway, she helped us absolutely to launch CRI. So as far as size, I think the size is really how many people we've graduated, which at this point is there are about 1,400 people globally that have gone through our certification program. As far as the facilities itself, or the faculty, we have 27 people who are listed as faculty for CRI now. About 10 of us that do the majority of it, but the balance are people who come in and offer specialty training and things like nutrition, neurology, etc. And then as far as facilities, we have our 2 locations in the US, one in Denver and one in Florida. And then we also have locations in Brisbane, London, and Belgium.
So I'd love to know from Chris, seeing as you were there from the beginning, what was your kind of experience of that launch and start of CRI?
Oh, that's a big one. I think it happened very quickly, and people just jumped on board, knowing that this was such a huge need. I was also involved in the development of the American College of Veterinary Sports Medicine and Rehabilitation. It was very interesting because there were many veterinarians who were doing sports medicine that was kind of reflected the kinds of sports medicine things that were being done in horses, and rehabilitation was kind of an afterthought. And I think in some ways, I'm not sure, Jan, if I'm wrong on this, but I think in some ways the rehabilitation component was delayed in horses. I think it came much faster, and I think it's much easier to do probably in dogs than in horses. But the people who started to realize, hey, why aren't we doing this? This is really important. And so people joined up very, very quickly. And I think that expanded the field extremely quickly. And it was really funny because when we were creating the College of Sports Medicine, which was initially the College of Veterinary Sports Medicine, and I kind of said, we should put rehabilitation in here. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, that's really important, And so I think that really helped bring it to the forefront as well, the whole rehabilitation component, that it was a credible science in humans, and why isn't it also a credible science in veterinary medicine as well? So
what you've just said really makes me feel and think that people were ready. They really needed this.
Absolutely.
They were ready. So when you brought it forward, people were ready. That's amazing. It's so exciting.
I just think the other thing is that a whole bunch of people had been doing it on their own, trying to figure things out on their own, and they were just waiting for something like CRI to put this all together into a system that would allow them to learn from others, collaborate, and have a plan, have a more directed plan and how to complete this. Yeah, I think it was waiting to happen.
We go further when we go together, right?
Yeah.
I think also everyone was looking for validation, saying, this makes sense to me. It's intuitive that I should be doing this, but I need some validation that I'm doing it correctly and that the techniques we're using are appropriate, and so that is really what drove us into the whole research side of this.
Very important. What are the kind of core values and the mission, the beliefs of CRI?
Well, our tagline is evidence-based and experience-driven, and our core objective is to make sure that we do bring evidence-based practice to the forefront in rehabilitation, which is why the research piece is so vital, to be able to look at the things that we do every week and say, do we really have science to back this up? And if not, what do we do differently? So our other sort of core beliefs are that the temptation is to think you can buy toys that will make you into a rehab therapist, right? Underwater treadmill and a laser and some other things. When in reality, the two most important pieces of equipment to have to practice this well are attached to the ends of your radius and ulna, well-trained hands. And that's what makes human physical therapists who are good and successful, it's what makes them successful, is that they have tremendous manual skills, both diagnostically and therapeutically. And so our emphasis in our program is to say, we'll teach you how to use the laser and an underwater treadmill and the other pieces of equipment that are there that can help you. But the key piece we're going to teach you is really how to be a better diagnostician, and that it's 90% evaluation and 10% treatment. Otherwise it's garbage in, garbage out, right?
It's so important. I feel like we get caught up in the modalities and the toys, and we just get caught up in the excitement of it. And it's really, they are great and they can enhance our practice, but they can enhance when we when we use them with our hands. And that's something that Laurie McCauley was talking about, and that she talks about quite a bit in her laser course. Yeah, laser is a phenomenal tool, but it works best when you're using it with your hands, when you're evaluating as you're using it and you're adjusting as you're going and you're working together with your hands. So it's always, if you had to choose one modality, it's right here.
Yeah, exactly. And also just to go back to the diagnostic piece, we see so many people getting lasers and then saying, I don't know if it really works all that well.
Yeah.
Because you can't, it's just not like a dishwasher, where you sort of knock the big stuff off and put the dog in and hope when he comes out the other end, he's better. Some people are getting lasers and then they think, well, it looks like it's maybe a shoulder lameness. And so spinning the laser around the dog's shoulder rather than saying, let's go tease out exactly what tissue is the problem and then treat it appropriately.
So what is unique about the Canine Rehabilitation Institute as a training institution?
I think what makes this work so well is that everybody on faculty has their own rehabilitation practice. They know what it costs to turn the lights on in the morning. They know how you have to work in order to be not only effective, but efficient, and to be able to handle multiple clients and really keep the doors open, right? So they teach from the science perspective, but also with the practicality very much at the forefront. We want you to be able to do very thorough evaluations, but you need to be able to do it in a way that allows you to see enough cases in a day to pay the bills, Yeah. So I think that practical experience piece is key. As I sit looking at Chris and thinking back to the 20 years ago when we first started doing this, the other key is that most of our faculty, we're all getting a little bit long of tooth, as they say, and we've been practicing this a long time. So it's not sort of newbies jumping in and saying, I've done this for a couple of years now, I'm going to teach you how to do it.
What are you implying here?
I'm implying that we've improved with age. We're like fine wine, Chris.
Okay. All right.
Especially you.
very experienced, and just, I mean, there's so much value in experience. And I really love that every member of the faculty is also in practice, because that can be, that can be difficult to achieve. Teaching and balancing teaching and your clients can be a challenge, right? Chris, do you want to share a little bit about it with us, about that challenge?
I think that perhaps rehabilitation has a larger home component than most aspects of veterinary medicine, and I think that, and then that really does involve teaching the client. I mean, you're not in regular, I suppose, veterinary medicine, you're not teaching the client how to establish an IV or how to do some of these other techniques, but really home exercise programs are a hugely important component of rehabilitation therapy. And one that I find, honestly, I think is not as well done as it could be. I think very often I think we have to assess the clients and decide which clients can deal with this and how much each client can deal with, and make sure that we involve them by communicating to them very well how to do these things, what to watch for, etc. But to involve them in their own, in my case, dogs, healing is a really important part of practice. But that's a big communication issue.
How's the balance for you of being on the faculty and teaching, as well as running your own practice and having patients? How do you balance those two things in your life so that it works for you?
Well, speaking of being long in the tooth, I don't practice full time, so that helps. And also, I hate to say this, but I don't have children, and I think for women, once you get past the age where your kids go to other places, I think that opens up all kinds of time for you that you didn't have before. And so I think that's, I mean, I maybe that's a benefit of getting long in tooth, because they're gone. I never had any, but I know other people that have had them, that their kids are gone, and now they have more time to be able to accomplish the things that they had put aside to bring up good citizens. But I know for myself, and I think for many of the colleagues that I have that are in, especially women in veterinary practice, because it's so much of the childbearing part of it lies with women, are fantastic workers, fantastic multitaskers, fantastic people who can do this and manage that and manage the other thing. And my hat's off to them.
So I have a great question here from Sarah, which I think will be a good one for you, Janet. Where is CRI on educating the dog parent directly? I'm a PT in Canine rehab and have had the experience in interacting with dog parents or owners online through a Facebook group, that there is a large misconception that rehab is hydro and laser, etc., along the lines of what Dr. Van Dyke was talking about. That's a very good point, the perception that our owners have.
So, as far as where we are on educating the dog parent, a couple of things. We have made a concerted effort to help to educate the public, to help them recognize the need for, or the access to and the availability of rehabilitation therapists around the globe, right? So that dog owners, dog handlers, dog enthusiasts can now see that, it's not hard to find someone who can do this for you appropriately. And then as far as our training program, what we do to train people to communicate better with the client, we spend a fair amount of time on that in our program. The client education piece being so key. And then we do our continuing education courses that are also geared toward how do you make that communication piece work better. For instance, we have, to Chris's point, the therapeutic exercise, the need to really communicate to the client how they're going to do the home exercise component, and to train them how to train the dog to do it correctly and safely is key. So we know that in our certification program, we can train people how to, veterinarians and physios and vet nurses, how to do the therapeutic exercises. Eventually we all do this, in practice, you get sort of stuck in a rut. Pretty soon you're pulling the same 3 or 4 exercises out all the time because those are your go-tos. And you start to think, I wish I could, sort of freshen my program a bit. So we offer this therapeutic exercise 2-day course for people to come and learn some new tricks, learn some better ways to train the dog to do the trick, and then how to train the client to make sure that they are offering the exercise for the dog appropriately. So the communication piece is vital and vital to the success of anybody's practice.
I couldn't agree more. And it just, again, highlights what we've actually been talking about in almost every qualifier up until now, that communication is just so important. And it's a skill that we learn and develop. I think that's another misconception that we have, is that if I'm not good at communicating with people, it's just how I am. When the truth is that we all start that way, and you need to practice, you need to develop it as a skill, you need to learn the skills to be able to do it.
Yep.
So yeah, really, really good point. So tell us a little bit about the courses. You've mentioned now that there's a therapeutic exercise course, which sounds very exciting. What else do you guys have to offer?
Well, so, our two big core programs obviously are the certification program in canine rehabilitation and a certification program in veterinary acupuncture, veterinary medical acupuncture. So Western-based, neurophysiology-based acupuncture. In addition to those two, then we have a pretty robust selection of continuing education programs. We have a business course, which goes back to that point that you have to be efficient and be able to pay the bills in order for this to work well for you. So we have a business course that's 3 weeks, all online, interactive, live program taught by 2 physios and a veterinarian, all who run all 3 types of practices, the mobile, rehab only, and within a general practice. Our TheraX program that I talked about, we have a 2-day or 3-day program on veterinary orthotics and prosthetics. So teaching you what is available, what applications you can use, and actually the hands-on piece then of how to create the impression molds that are used by the orthotist to develop the actual product. We have a new one coming up next spring called Current Techniques in Clinical Orthopedic Rehabilitation. That one is taught by Sasha Foster, who is one of our lead faculty members and who runs the rehabilitation service at Colorado State University, and Ross Palmer, who is former head of orthopedics at Colorado State. So looking at current ways of evaluating all the different diagnostics that are available, the new surgical approaches, and then the prehab and rehab approaches that Sasha's team puts with them. So I think that one's going to be really great. That's coming up next May.
And then that's a good selection. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we have, of course, Chris's research course that we've been doing this now for several years. And is it 11 weeks, Chris, now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 11 weeks where you do sort of the upside down classroom. You do your homework to get started, and then you meet once a week with Chris to go over your homework and your projects. And they go over everything from developing a hypothesis to actually having a pilot study ready to go by the end of your 11 weeks together. And we've had several people successfully publish their papers as a result of taking part in that course. So that one's great.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very inspiring. Just like Chris's lecture just now, like inspiring is what I take from that. So yeah. I love that you have the business course, because that is a big blind spot for many of us. It's a big challenge for so many of us. So that one's really valuable. And then the others sound fun. And then the research one is critical. It's critical to our profession and to us. So that's very exciting. Let's dive into that a little bit more. So 11 weeks. What else can you tell me about?
I think Chris is probably better at describing it than I am, but as I said, she starts it with, how to write a good hypothesis, and then helps the students just progress their programs. So Chris, why don't you run with it?
So it starts off with looking at the types of research, so observational research and clinical trials. And what we do is with every week we have a couple of papers to look at that demonstrate the types of research that are possible in veterinary medicine, and then early on they do develop a hypothesis, just a simple question, and they work on it through the weeks. So, for example, one person wanted to compare, just a simple thing, wanted to compare what data they would obtain by using a stance analyzer as compared to just using scales. I mean, it was just something simple like that they could do during during the week, the time, so that they can sort of have the experience alongside of the book learning from the papers, etc. We often get also people who are doing either their full-time residency or practice related residency for canine sports medicine and rehabilitation, since they have to produce a paper, so they get kind of forced to learn it. But so alongside of learning the kinds of research that we're doing, what kinds of statistical questions you have to ask, we go into statistics a fair bit, the simplest parts of it, so you know the kind of statistics that you need to understand to set off to do a research project. Ultimately, probably you will hire a statistician in the end to analyze the data. Let's get that out of the way. You don't have to be doing that yourself, and people are really relieved about that. And so we have the projects that people are working on, a very simple project at the same time as we're looking at the kinds of research there is, what kinds of questions, how do you ask the question, what is the difference, for example, things like what's the difference between precision and accuracy, and how do you establish that when you're trying to gather data. We look at other things like how to set up a survey and how to ask questions accurately for a survey. Use what kinds of regulations you need to deal with when you're using clients' animals for studies, etc. So I guess it's in many ways it's a survey of all of the kinds of aspects about research that people can do while they're doing a little pilot project on the side, so they can experience some things in their own hands that they have to deal with.
Which is so valuable, right? If we're doing it, the easiest way to learn is through doing, or the most powerful maybe way to learn is through doing. So I really love that, and it definitely sounds like, yeah, you walk away ready to roll.
It really does. And like I said, several of the people who've taken the course have gone ahead, followed through, and published their studies. So that's been really cool.
Right. And they consistently, in their evaluations of the course, come back saying, I did this I was just sort of curious. I really didn't think I'd ever do any research in practice, but I wanted to kind of understand it better. And they all come back saying, wow, I feel so much more empowered. The ability to read journal papers. And
that's another thing that people all say, man, I read journal papers so differently now.
Yeah. To critically look at them and say, okay, this is going to change how I practice, or, that this study, it's the beginning, but it's not going to alter what I'm doing in practice. But several of them now are saying, I'm so excited to join into research studies and study groups, because I'm comfortable now that I know that I'm doing it correctly. And, it's that sort of fear of the unknown. And Chris, I don't know if everybody's aware, but I mean, she's probably one of the premier research scientists in the world. And to have that skill set, the number of grants that she's been able to successfully fill, and PhD students she's trained, her understanding of what it takes to do proper research, she can do it with her eyes closed. And so, but then on top of that, when you add dog to the sentence, Chris becomes so excited and so enthusiastic and so that it's like, it's a blast, So people are like, I don't know, 11 weeks. And after the first week, they go, can we just do this for like 12 or 13 weeks? Because I'm having so much fun.
Oh, that's amazing. How many students do you usually like to have in the course?
Chris, what is your max that you'll do this year?
I think it was 10. Was it 10 or 12, something like that?
12, yeah. Because it's very interactive, and Chris has a ton of stuff to evaluate each week as she does little homework projects with everybody. So there really is a limit to how many we can fit in at a time. And we want it to be something where people are comfortable. It's a collegial small group and you don't feel like you're getting bowled over by 20 other participants. So we keep it intimate.
I love that. No, I love that. And I really want to challenge you guys, if you're listening, if you're watching the replay, I hope that over the last few weeks, we have inspired you to do this. You can do it. We can all do it. So if you have a question, if you want to know more, get into this course and empower yourself, right? It's about being empowered, even if that is just to have the knowledge and the understanding so that in the future you have the tools to do it. If you don't want to do it now, that's okay. Let's equip ourselves and empower ourselves with the knowledge so that we can do this and contribute to growing our field. It's really exciting. I love it.
Yeah, that empowerment piece is really so key. I think people have this sense of I am not worthy. I didn't do a complete residency. I'm not board certified. I don't know how to do it, so I won't. And instead, this course, with Chris's enthusiasm and her ability to make statistics actually kind of fun and interesting. I mean, I'm blown away every week when she does the stats. I'm like, God, you can actually wrap your head around this stuff. But for people to then just get over that fear of the unknown, I just don't think I should do this because I don't have the experience. And once they see that you can do it, and you can do it whether you're going to be doing major publications or taking part in a clinical study, it's so rewarding. And knowing that it's that giving back. It's giving back to this field that we're all loving so much, but giving back in the form of helping us know, can we validate what we're doing, and should we be doing things differently?
It's so important to grow and deepen our field, our understanding, our knowledge. It's the only way that we can grow is through research, right? Because if you speak to veterinarians and to other professionals, one of the biggest things that comes up is, but does this work? Why does it work? How does it work? And we can't answer those questions unless we have the evidence to back it up. So it's and we all need to contribute to that. So I really love that. I really want to repeat that. We all should be contributing. I think the other question that I had in terms of your main certification programs, what makes them different? Why should someone choose to get certified through the CRI?
So in addition to having this really great faculty, I think the other big difference is, we sort of alluded to it with the research course, small class size. We make sure that your opportunity to get one-on-one training with the best of the best is there in every one of the classes. So we limit our class size. Our biggest class will be 28 people. And with that, we just did one last week. We had 11 faculty members in the room. So
wow.
That makes sure that everybody's getting that one-on-one. Nobody can drift off to the back or feel like we had to rush through that. They get the time. So it's very practical. It's very hands-on. It's also, our program, we recognize that life is sort of an open book exam, right? When you go into an exam room and a client comes in, the client doesn't, if you're a little mystified by something you're seeing in the dog, the client doesn't say, no, you can't look at your notes and you have 2 minutes to answer this question. What they say is, do the best you can to get me the right answer. And so we do our exams that way, rather than having you have to fly back in and sit down and take an exam someplace. We recognize it's more rewarding to have case-based example questions in your exams and the ability to use your notes. We want you to know how to go back and look at your notes, and how to also network with your fellow students and your faculty to say, I'm a little stumped with this question, or I see 2 possible answers that could be correct for this question. I want to challenge my faculty on how am I supposed to discern the difference, right? So our approach is very much open book, open communication as well, that everybody has all of our contact information and they're invited to reach out as they're going through the exam. So the exam becomes for each module becomes a continuation of the education process and not just a punishment, right?
That is incredibly, incredibly empowering, because I often find that when we graduate, we feel like we need to have all the answers. I'm a professional now. I did it. I'm here. I've got to know what's in front of me. And every patient, every client, every scenario and situation is different. So we can't expect that of ourselves. So you kind of embedding that into the whole process is so powerful, because it means we walk away with that mental training that I don't have all the answers. I can ask. I need to look for answers.
Right.
And that's powerful. That's amazing.
And I know where to look, right? It's
Yes.
I know I have a network that I can turn to, and I know where the answers to these questions are or should be. So that's really our goal.
That's very powerful. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing a little bit about CRI, about yourselves. Chris, I'm glad that you could stay on with us. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been great to be with you.
Bye, guys.
Ciao.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. And please, if you get a moment, head over to Stitcher or iTunes and leave me a review. It's a really lonely job being a podcaster, and so the only time I get to hear from you or know that you're out there is when I get a review. And know that I read every single one of your reviews. So to those of you that have left reviews, I want to say a very, very big thank you. Every time we get a review, it really helps to get the Veterinary Rehabilitation podcast out there to all the vet rehabbers all over the world. All right, vet rehabbers, so if you are looking for more continuing education in the field of veterinary rehabilitation, head over to onlinepethealth.com. Go be awesome, guys.